JPD Studio, where learn, code, build, and innovation. Today we will discuss API calls in React.js using Fetch API and Axios API. End of this video, you will understand difference between Fetch and Axios, when when to be use Fetch and Axios in your React projects. Let's get started. Introduction of APIs calls. First API, what is API? Second, Fetch API. Third is Axios API. Now we go for next slide. Definitions of API calls. An API calls is a request made by a client, browser, application, or software to a server to fetch and send data. This is done using HTTP methods such as get, post, put, delete over the internet. How API calls work? The first step, clients React app post etc sending the request to server using API endpoints. Step number 2, the server process the request and retrieve and modify the data. Step number 3, server responds the data with JSON, XML, etc and an HTTP status code like 200 OK 400 405. This will be display. Fourth step, client process and display the retrieved data. Types of callings. First is get, fetching data from the server. Post, sending new data to a server. Put, update existing data. Delete, remove the data from the server. These are some example of Axios. Axios get URL, post data, and put for this Axios this. API is code status. 200 means request was successfully. 201 is created means data was successfully created. 400 bad request means the request will invalid. 401 unauthorized request, authorized request. 404 not found. API endpoints does not exist. 500 internal server error. Server side issue. These are some status code for API calls. Now we go for next. What is Fetch API? Fetch API is built-in a JavaScript methods using to make a HTTP request, get, post, put, delete to a server. It's allow web application to communicate with APIs and fetch data synchronously. Syntax for Fetch APIs: fetch URL and options, then response and response.json. Convert response to a JSON. Then data console log, handle the data. Catch for error, console error, error name and error, handle errors. What is URL in here? API endpoints. Options, parameters like methods, head and body. Options for here. Dot then handle a response. Dot catch, catching errors. Okay now here using fetch APIs in React, get request, JavaScript, copy edit. Okay get request, import React, use effect and use state from React. Use effect is fetching APIs in function mode. I already explained in the hooks classes. Function fetch a example, console const data and set data, use state empty, fetching JSON placeholder dot type dot com post is a URL, sample URL. You can also use dot then response for JSON, then JSON set data JSON catch error, console error, putting the fetching error and name. Empty dependency only once in the run. Return div h2 fetching example data slice 0.5 mapping item dot list key value item id and item title will be displayed. URL done, close, export default URL. Then we will call in app.js. All these things will be showing. Okay. Now we go for next. Definition of Axios. Axios is a promised-based JavaScript library used for making HTTP request API calls from the browser and Node.js. It simplifies fetching, sending, updating and deleting data from the server, supports get, post, put, delete request, automatic transfer response data to JSON, handle errors and timeouts better than fetch API, and support request and response interception. Syntax is Axios method, URL, data and header. Dot then response console log, response data will be displayed. Catch error and console log error will be displayed. Here some example using fetch API, using Axios in React, get request, import use state and use effect from the React Axios from it is installed by npm install Axios. Install library, it is a third-party library. Function Axios example const data and data fetch API get method. This is a URL. Then get response set data response dot data catch error console log errors fetching the error name. Suppose the error will become only once, dependencies empty array once will be run. Axios example, same example but in Axios format. Okay, now we go for next. Axios versus fetch API. Built-in in browser, no need installation, but here yes. Automatic JSON parsing, yes, no need, JSON will be there. Error handling better manually. Timeout support, yes, but here no. Interceptions, yes and no. Import. Now example is there, fetch API import React from React library, Control Z, import CSS, app.css, now class component, class app extend react dot component function starts constructor props. Inside this constructor superclass super class. Then one more thing, this dot state equal to item empty array comma data is load is false. Okay, comma curly braces semicolon. Okay, then component did mount is used to execute the code. Component did mount. Inside this fetch API, through fetch API calling https JSON placeholder dot typecon dot com/user. First of all, this is a fetch API. Here component did mount case is there. After that, this is a fetch API calling. Then dot then res.json. Okay, dot then JSON this dot set state item dot colon JSON data is loaded. True. ऐसे ही कॉल करते हैं। नाउ रेंडर const data is load comma items is equal to this dot state if data is loaded return div inside div h1 wait some time, write this message and then close this render function. Final return function here div inside div class name dot app, inside this we write h3 fetch data from an API in React. Now again div class name should be container. Container inside this item dot map item div don't worry, I will correct it. Div inside div ol inside ol key item dot id div strong, strong, strong. User name, item dot user name. Okay, then email and div one div is there. Control C, Control V, Control V. Okay, here username change into full name. Remove this strong. Full name. Remove this strong. User under email, here full name is equal to name email. Outside the div, now export function. export, export default app. Okay, then I will check what is error. Some small error is there. I resolved this. Now you can check here. Call npm start here. First of all, whenever he started, time taken, I show the APIs. CSS API I will write here app container item and Greek. Okay, for one thing, sorry for this. Time taken for starting. Now start, completely run. Now we go for here. See here, see username battery, full name learn battery, and this is email ID. This way he works on this. Okay, this way he works on this. Now instead of fetch we put instead of fetch we put Axios here. Axios dot get, same program, nothing should be changed. Then this one only one then will be used. Don't worry, I will remove one thing. See, Axios, or one more thing, everything is same. Now here import Axios from Axios line number 18 JSON. Sorry, instead of JSON we write REST data, REST data. Okay, one thing I install here, what npm install Axios. It's time taken for Axios, otherwise now npm start, nothing will be changed, everything should be same. I close this one, you can easily understand. It's loading time taken, nothing will be, all things will be same. Server joining time taken. See, fetch data, username, everything should be same. Difference is in API, in fetch API, 2 then will be needed, but in Axios only 1 then needed, and everything will be same. You can see here. Do you have any doubt? Comment in chat box.